Well, if you don't like your government chasing immigrants through churches, then you're going to like the fact that a Quaker group joined together with a Baptist group to join together with a Sikh group, and they obtained through Judge Chang in Maryland the latest injunction against the Trump administration, this one to stop their depraved policy of raiding, I mean raiding churches looking for people with undocumented status. Is that the country you want to live in? I don't think so. I'm on Midas Touch and Legal AF, and so are you. Let's get into it. I'm Michael Popak. About a week or so ago, we reported on the new lawsuit filed where else in Maryland, a lot of these cases against the Trump administration, and there's more than 90 of them as of last count, are coming, about half of them in the Virginia, D.C., and Maryland area against these agencies. Now, Judge Chang, a Obama appointee, had a hearing, and this was the order that just came out. I'm going to read to you in a minute, enjoining, stopping, blocking the immigration service, the ICE service, and Homeland Security from raiding churches. But it's not a national injunction, and it doesn't apply to everyone similarly situated. It really just applies, unfortunately, for now, to the 6 Quaker groups that are operating in 37 states, and the Baptists out of Georgia, and the Sikhs out of California. But I'm sure this will be the start of a nationwide injunction. The reason the judge didn't do a nationwide injunction is he questioned whether this group had standing to represent all the other people or whether they had a unique injury. Now, this is the same Judge Chang that in part, and when he was doing his questioning of the lawyers for the Department of Justice and for these groups, Democracy Forward, when he questioned about their argument that this did not, the government's argument, the Trump argument, that this did not interfere with the First Amendment expression of religion, he said, well, I think, he said, instead, they argued that all these groups are here for the conjectural, speculative, future potential harm and subjective fear. And the judge fired back and said, subjective fear? When you have Kristi Noem, the Homeland Security director, going on videos, showing videos of her all dressed up in her cosplay ICE enforcement outfit, talking about getting dirt bags off the street, the judge said. That is not a subjective fear. In fact, we have a clip of that. Let's play the clip of what the judge was referring to.
Here in New York City this morning, we are getting the dirt bags off these streets.
So that's where, when you make videos, when you work for the Trump administration, or you say stupid things at your press conferences, they're going to be used against you in filings or with judges during this type of colloquy or discussion. Now, let me read to you from the actual injunction. Again, it's not nationwide, but it does apply to a large group of people here, represented by the Quakers. And shout out to the Quakers. We learned about them in grade school, usually about pacifists and not wanting to go to war. But, give them credit about how they're handling things here. Their major argument to the judge was, we, as part of our religion, invite people to attend meetings. We want them to attend our Quaker meetings. We cannot in good conscience do that because there's fear that some of these people are undocumented, we don't know who they are, and that they're going to be raided during the meeting, putting them in harm's way. So it's a little bit of a safe haven argument. Here's what the judge ruled. The judge did not like an order that came out in January that's been enforced here. It says the defendants, the United States Department of Homeland Security, Kristi Noem, in her official capacity of Secretary of Homeland Security, U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement, ICE, are enjoined or blocked as follows. In relation to all potential or actual immigration enforcement actions in or near any place of worship owned, operated, occupied, or used by any of the above captioned plaintiffs, that is the Philadelphia Yearly Meeting of the Religious Society of Friends, the Religious Society of Friends being the Quakers, the New England Yearly Meeting, the Baltimore Yearly Meeting, the Adelphi Friends Meeting of the Religious Society of Friends, the Richmond Friends, the Religious Society of Friends New York Yearly Meeting, the Cooperative Baptist Fellowship, and the Sikh Temple Sacramento, they are not allowed to enforce it there. And to answer the question that I know will come up, as of right now, they could enforce it against, and they could use the policy to raid other churches not listed here, but I think they do so at their own risk. And the judge went on to say that that group of entities, the defendant shall not implement, enforce, apply, or act pursuant to a memorandum from January 20th from the acting Secretary of Homeland Security entitled Enforcement Actions in or Near Protected Areas. I mean, right there, you've got protected areas, which Donald Trump and his group have completely destroyed. B, in his order, Judge Chang's order, in relation to all potential or actual immigration enforcement actions in or near any place of worship owned or operated by the above plaintiffs or their agents, defendants shall instead implement, enforce, or apply an act pursuant to the terms of a memorandum from October 27, 2021, from the then Secretary of Homeland Security under Biden, Mayorkas, called the Guidelines for Enforcement Actions in or Near Protected Areas. And he attaches it. In other words, that's what he's telling them. It's a mandatory injunction in that way. It's a prohibitive injunction stopping them from enforcing the January 31st, 2025 memo, and a mandatory injunction, preliminarily at least, compelling them to use the earlier memo, go back to the status quo of the earlier memo. The judge also notes that, consistent with federal law, this injunction does not enjoin or restrict defendants from conducting arrests in or near places of worship when authorized by administrative or judicial warrant. As necessary for the enforcement of the preliminary injunction, plaintiffs shall provide to the defendants, the government, immediately, and in any event, no less than 3 days after the date of this order, a list of all their places of worship. And of course, he enforces it by contempt of court. So what does it all mean? It all means that as for now, in at least 37 different locations operated by the Sikhs, the Baptists, and the Quakers, the group there, the Religious Society of Friends, ICE is going to have to wait outside. This does not impact some of the more nefarious aspects of that memo. They are still able, and they are currently, so if you like your government chasing people through hospitals, funeral homes, and schools, and also social services offices, then you'll like everything that this Trump administration is doing. If that is not the government or the society that you wanted to wake up in, just picture ICE agents chasing, right? Undocumented immigrants fearing for their life through churches, schools, hospitals, social services offices, and the like. Is that Handmaid's Tale vision? Is that what you wanted? I'm not talking to my audience. I'm talking to those that's outside of our audience about why they think they're so happy with the Trump administration, although polling says they're not. Polling, Republican town halls held by Congress in their communities says that not only is the Trump administration criminal, but it is wholly unpopular, even with their own people in the red states, because they finally woke up and said, wait a minute, you're cutting government funding, including all the programs that helped me? This is a version of Not in My Backyard. We call it NIMBY. Enforce it against my neighbor, not against me. And now they're waking up to realize how much money they're losing, how much federal funding they're losing, how much support they're losing. And he's woefully unpopular. I mean, he's 10 points below Joe Biden coming in, and 66 or more percent of the population, including his own followers, don't think he's doing enough to help them. It spells disaster for this administration. It spells disaster for them holding the House and the Senate in the midterms. But of course, that's not their goal, everybody. Their goal is to, and this is Donald Trump's legacy, is to, at least for the short term, reshape the relationship between you and me and our government. In other words, make the government distant from you and me, including its funding and its help programs. And that's his major goal, and implement everything about Project 2025. So kudos out to Judge Chang, did the right thing. That's a preliminary injunction. This will then, I assume, will be some sort of appeal to the Fourth Circuit Court of Appeals, which covers Maryland. Depending upon the results there, an emergency application to the United States Supreme Court. And we'll follow it all right here on the Midas Touch Network and Legal AF. Let me take a moment. This is the time to join together, not fall apart, right? This is the time for us to unite. We've already seen the surge in following and viewership for the Midas Touch Network and everything about it. Legal AF is up to top 30 in the world in news and top 5 in news analysis. And that's all because of you. We do the show Wednesdays and Saturdays at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, a long format at the intersection of law and politics podcast called Legal AF. If you didn't know why we called it that, now you do. Join us there and everywhere you can get our podcast from, all audio podcast platforms like Apple, Google, etc. A new Legal AF YouTube channel, not so new. We formed it in September. We're already almost at 500,000. We're about 25,000 shy of that. We'll get there in the next 2 or 3 weeks, but only with your help. Take a moment, hit the subscribe button. It's free. It lets you know about all our programming. We're doing 6 to 8 recordings a day at that intersection of law and politics. And of course, my work here, Michael Popak, every Tuesday night, a brand new podcast called Popak Live. You got it. I'm untethered. I'm unhinged. I'm unfiltered. No one tells me what to say. No one puts baby in a corner here on the Midas Touch Network. So until my next recording of All Things Legal AF, I'm Michael Popak.